"You're not like them," he said, his voice low and almost a growl. "You think you can stay away, but you can't." Kayla Mitchell could barely breathe as the words hit her like a physical blow. Her heart raced, her hands shaking with a mixture of fear and desire. Her body had been telling her to run, to get out, to leave the dangerous man standing in front of her. But that voice, that pull, the way he looked at her, so raw, so intense, it made her feel like she was already tangled up in him. The man who owned half the city, who controlled people's lives with a simple glance, just said something that made her blood freeze. She pulled away, staring at him with disbelief. "I'm not some prize you get to claim, June." But he wasn't listening. His eyes, dark with intent, followed her every move. She'd known men like him before, dangerous, manipulative, used to getting what they wanted. But June wasn't like the others. No, he wasn't about control. He was about something more, something deeper. And maybe that's what terrified her. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you were already in too deep? Drop a comment and subscribe to Tales by Wave. What would you do in Kayla's shoes? Would you fight it or give in? She should have known better. Kayla had spent years fighting for her place in the world, fighting to be seen for who she truly was, not for her body, not for her curves, not for her skin. But June? He didn't see her like that. He didn't see her as anyone's token. He saw her for what she was, someone who could break him and remake him all at once. It started innocently enough, when she was called in to plan a high-profile underground event for a client who didn't play by the rules. The kind of event that Kayla had always avoided, knowing it would pull her into a world she wasn't ready for. But the money? The money was too good. The first time they met, she had no idea who he was. Just a rich client with a sharp, calculating smile, all ice on the outside, but there was something about him. A dangerous pull that made her skin tingle, like a live wire. But when she noticed him watching her with those eyes that saw more than anyone else ever had, that was when everything changed. She tried to keep her distance, to remind herself that she didn't belong in his world, but every moment in his presence felt like a storm building, one she wasn't ready for, but couldn't resist. The world around her felt like it was spinning, blurring into something that didn't make sense anymore. But there was one thing that was crystal clear: June didn't care about her past, her body, or the way others saw her. He only cared about one thing: possessing her heart. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't sure if she was going to survive this. Kayla tried to focus on the details, her event, her team, the catering. But the entire time, June's gaze felt like it was burning a hole in her. She could feel it, even when she didn't look directly at him. He was there, watching her, always watching her, and it made her skin crawl in the best way possible. Every time she glanced over, his eyes were locked on hers, too intense, too deep, as if he could see inside her, pull out her fears, her desires, her weaknesses. He wasn't just another rich client. Not just another man trying to get something from her. No, June Kim was different. More cinnamon, Kayla muttered as she adjusted the dessert table. But her hands were shaking now, and she wasn't sure if it was from the cold or from the way June's eyes never left her. She could hear his voice in her mind: "You're not like them." But what did that even mean? What did he see in her? It wasn't just about the money anymore. Not when June made every other man in the room look like nothing more than background noise. He wasn't just wealthy. He was a force. A storm. She couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd spoken to her earlier, his words cutting through the tension of the evening with a quiet force. "You think you can stay away, but you can't." He wasn't making a request. He was making a promise. Kayla was used to being in control. She had to be. Her business, her life, they were hers to navigate. But June was a different kind of problem. He made her question everything she thought she knew about herself. His arrogance, his confidence, they unsettled her. And yet, somehow, she wasn't afraid. Not really. She was intrigued, more than she wanted to admit. As the night went on, the party stretched into hours, guests mingling and laughing, but for Kayla, the world had narrowed to just one person. When the event wrapped up, the tension between them was unbearable. She packed up the last of the catering supplies, pretending she wasn't aware of him standing just a few feet away, his presence almost suffocating. But when their eyes met, something inside her snapped. She had to get out. She couldn't do this. Not with him. She couldn't let herself fall for a man who lived in the shadows, whose world was built on things she didn't understand. But as she moved toward the exit, June's voice stopped her, the familiar edge of command in his tone. "You're leaving already?" Kayla turned to face him, trying to keep the tremble out of her voice. "I have to go. My team is waiting for me." His gaze softened for a moment, just long enough for her to believe he might actually care. But she couldn't afford to let herself believe it. He took a step closer. "You think you can escape me? You're wrong." His words sent a chill through her, but this time, there was no fear. Just a strange, undeniable pull that made her heart race and her thoughts scatter. Kayla couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes on her. Every time she walked into a room, she felt the heat of his gaze, even if he wasn't looking directly at her. She tried to ignore it, tried to tell herself it was just the nature of their business relationship. He was a client. She was a professional. That was all. But the more she worked with June, the harder it became to keep that distance. There was a dinner 2 weeks after the event, a casual thing, at least that's what she'd told herself. Dinner with June Kim. A dinner where her heart raced for reasons she couldn't explain. It wasn't just his wealth that held her attention, or the cold, commanding way he moved. No, it was something darker. The way he saw her. The way he knew things she hadn't told him. The way his presence filled the space between them, suffocating her, yet drawing her in. The night of the dinner, she arrived early, nerves twisting her stomach into knots. She had convinced herself she would keep things professional. No emotions, no distractions. She had to stay in control. She needed to. But as soon as June walked in, the air shifted. His tailored suit, his sharp features, the way the room seemed to bend to his will. He didn't even need to say anything to make an impact. He just was. He had that power. "You're here early," June said, his voice a low hum that sent a shiver down her spine. He reached out to pull the chair back for her, his eyes never leaving hers. Kayla sat down, trying to ignore the flutter in her chest. "I wanted to get this over with," she replied, her voice steady, but even she could hear the lie in it. June smiled, but there was no humor in it. "You don't like pretending, do you?" Kayla blinked, caught off guard by his bluntness. She hadn't expected him to notice. Or maybe she hadn't wanted him to. "It's not about pretending," she said, looking away, but she could feel his gaze burning through her. "It's just, this isn't my world." "I think it's more your world than you admit," he said, sitting down across from her. "You're not like them, Kayla. I see you." The words hit harder than she expected. He wasn't just talking about her appearance or her business skills. He was talking about something deeper. Something that made her feel both exposed and empowered. Her heart was already betraying her. She tried to stay focused on the food, on the conversation, but all she could think about was the pull between them. The unspoken thing that hung heavy in the air. The thing neither of them was willing to admit, but both were aware of. It wasn't long before the conversation turned into something less about business and more about them. The more they talked, the more Kayla realized how little she actually knew about him. And how little he knew about her. She thought she could keep this distance. She told herself she could. But the more she looked into June's eyes, the more she realized he was already making her want things she had promised herself she would never allow. Kayla had spent her life building walls. Walls to protect her from the harsh words her family tossed at her. Walls to hide the parts of herself she had learned to despise. Walls to keep everyone out. Because every time she let someone close, they found a way to hurt her. But June had a way of making her feel like those walls didn't even exist. He'd been insistent. He'd come to every event, stayed late, asked more personal questions. Slowly, the professional distance she'd clung to was wearing away. And tonight was no different. The dinner from 2 weeks ago? That had been the beginning. But this felt like something else entirely. The job had been simple, a small event at a private club he owned. But when she arrived, the tension was already thick. June wasn't here for just another event. He wasn't even here for the food. He was here for her. "You're late," he said when she walked into the back room. His voice was soft, but there was an edge. His gaze followed her as she set her things down. "I'm not late. You're just early," she shot back, trying to keep the banter light. But something in the air felt off. His lips curled into a small smile, but his eyes didn't soften. They never softened. They stayed sharp, intense, focused on her like he was watching her, waiting for her to slip. And for a moment, Kayla wondered if she already had. The room was dim, the noise of the event muffled outside the door. They were alone, and suddenly, the walls between them felt non-existent. Kayla was about to speak when June's hand moved, just a fraction, brushing against her arm. She felt a jolt of electricity run through her, and her breath caught. For a second, she forgot everything. Her job, her fear, the warnings she'd set for herself. He noticed. Of course, he noticed. You feel it, too, he said, his voice quiet but firm. Kayla opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, her body betrayed her, and she stepped closer. Just a little. Enough to let him know she was feeling it, too. But she couldn't. She wasn't supposed to. She wasn't supposed to let herself get lost in him. She wasn't supposed to trust him. What is it you want from me, June? Her voice was barely a whisper, a mixture of confusion and something else, something that felt like need. His gaze darkened. You think I'm here for something from you? His eyes were searching her face now, but there was something else, something that made her pulse race. Something that went beyond control, beyond power. I don't need anything from you, Kayla. I just want you. The words hit her harder than she expected. The weight of them settled in her chest. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not with such certainty. Not with such hunger. And for the first time, Kayla wasn't sure if she was ready to fight it anymore. The moment Kayla stepped out of the car, she could feel the weight of everything pressing down on her. She had done her best to keep the distance, to keep her emotions locked away. But every time she saw June, every time he touched her, it felt like he was chipping away at those walls. The ones she'd spent years building. She couldn't keep pretending like she wasn't drawn to him. The city lights blurred as she walked into the private club. It was another event for June, another night spent in his world, a world she wasn't meant for. But tonight, everything felt different. He had insisted she come early, and she'd done it without thinking, without questioning it. The door closed behind her with a soft thud, and June's eyes were on her before she even made it inside. He was standing in the corner, casually leaning against the wall, his dark eyes scanning her. Always watching. You're on time tonight, he said, a slight smile pulling at the corners of his mouth. She ignored the way her heart fluttered at his words. I don't like to be late, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. He pushed off from the wall, moving toward her. His presence was suffocating, pulling her in like a magnet. She wanted to step back, to create some space between them, but it felt impossible. You're not here for the event, she said, her voice barely a whisper. What do you want from me, June? His eyes darkened, and the air around them grew thick with something unspoken. I want you to stop running. Kayla's breath hitched. He wasn't talking about just the event, was he? He was talking about them. About whatever it was that had been building between them since the first time they met. I'm not running, she said, but even she could hear the lie in her voice. You are. June stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers as if it was the most natural thing in the world. You think I'm just another client, just another man with power and money, but you're wrong. This, he paused, looking deep into her eyes, this isn't about what I can give you, Kayla. It's about what you need to let go of. What you need to stop fighting. The words were like a punch to her gut, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. She had spent her entire life fighting for validation, for love, for everything. But June's words stirred something inside her, something she couldn't ignore. What if he was right? She didn't have an answer. His fingers brushed her arm, and this time, she didn't pull away. She couldn't. The electricity between them was undeniable, pulling her closer, no matter how much she wanted to fight it. I'm not who you think I am, he murmured, his voice low. But I'm the only one who sees you for who you really are. Kayla's chest tightened. What did that even mean? Her mind was screaming at her to walk away, to protect herself, to remember who she was. But all she could do was stand there, inches away from him, her heart racing, her breath uneven. Was she ready for this? Or was it already too late? Kayla couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt thick, heavy with the unspoken words that lingered between her and June. She had come here for the event, but the closer she got to him, the more the event seemed to fade away. He was the only thing in the room that mattered now. You're not ready for this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but it felt like a confession. The words left her mouth before she could stop them. June didn't flinch. In fact, he stepped closer, and Kayla could feel the heat of his presence pressing against her. The space between them was nothing now, nothing but the storm that was about to break. "I'm not the one you need to worry about," June replied, his voice calm, but there was a fire in his eyes that told her he wasn't just talking about the event. He wasn't just talking about the men he dealt with, the business he ran. No, he was talking about her. Kayla took a step back, her pulse quickening. "You don't understand. I'm not like you. I can't just be with someone like you. I've built this life on my own. I can't risk it for someone who lives in the shadows." June's gaze didn't waver. He reached out, his hand brushing her cheek with such tenderness that it almost made her forget everything she had told herself. "Almost. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "But you've built your walls so high that no one will ever be able to get past them. Not even me." Her heart stuttered in her chest. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to let him in, to drop her guard, to feel what it was like to be seen for the first time in her life. But there was too much at stake. She shook her head. "You don't know what it's like. To always be the one who's never enough." Her voice cracked on the last words, and she hated herself for it. But she couldn't stop it. June's expression hardened, but there was no anger there. It was something else, something darker, more dangerous. "I know exactly what it's like," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "And I'm not going anywhere until you understand that." She felt the weight of his words settle into her bones. He wasn't asking for permission anymore. He wasn't trying to make her feel safe. He was just there, in the storm, with her. Kayla turned away, her chest tight with the feeling of something she couldn't name. She didn't want this. Not now. Not like this. But when she reached for the door, June's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with a force that made her freeze. She didn't have to look at him to know his eyes were locked on hers, dark and determined. "Don't walk away from me, Kayla," he said, his words like a command. "Not now. Not when I'm just getting started." Kayla's breath caught in her throat as she stood frozen, his grip still tight around her wrist. The air between them crackled with tension, an electric charge that neither of them seemed willing to release. She could feel his presence in every corner of the room, each step he took toward her sending a wave of heat through her body. She had promised herself she wouldn't let it go this far, that she'd be smart, stay away from the danger June represented. But each time he touched her, each time he spoke to her, the walls she had built around herself seemed to crumble, piece by piece. "You think you can just walk away from this?" June's voice was low, almost dangerous. His fingers tightened on her wrist, just enough to remind her of the power he held. Kayla opened her mouth, but no words came. What could she say? That she was scared? That she wanted to push him away but felt something too deep, too complicated to explain? "No," she finally whispered. "But I don't know how to stay, either." The honesty in her voice startled both of them. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her. About the way he made her feel things she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years, desire, fear, vulnerability, all at once. June stepped closer, his body pressing into hers in a way that felt like a promise. "You don't need to know how," he said, his voice thick with something she couldn't quite place. "You just need to trust me. Let me in, Kayla. You can fight it all you want, but the truth is, you need me." Her heart hammered in her chest, and for a moment, she almost believed him. She wanted to believe him. But her fear rose again, sharper this time. What if he was right? What if she did need him? What did that mean for her? For the life she had worked so hard to build? "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice shaking, the question more for herself than for him. June's eyes softened for a split second before that familiar, cold mask fell back into place. "Because you're mine," he said, his voice unwavering. "And I'm not letting you go." Kayla felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The possessiveness in his words made her feel both terrified and strangely desired. But desire was dangerous, and she knew better than to get lost in something she couldn't control. She pulled her wrist from his grip, the movement stiff, almost as if it was the only thing she could control in this moment. "No," she said, her voice louder now, more forceful. "You don't own me. Not now, not ever." June's gaze darkened. The change in him was instant. "You think you can fight this? You're wrong. You've always been wrong." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. There was no going back now. The silence between them was deafening, heavy with the weight of unsaid words. Kayla stood a few feet away from June, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths, the space between them stretching out in a way that felt almost painful. Her heart still raced from the tension, the sharpness of his words. She had pushed him away, but somehow, the distance only made the pull stronger. You really think you can fight this, Kayla? June's voice cut through the silence like a knife. His words were softer now, but they still held that same edge. His gaze didn't leave hers as he closed the gap between them. She swallowed hard, feeling the lump in her throat. Her mind screamed at her to step back, to put up more walls. But her body wanted nothing more than to move forward. No, she said, the word trembling in her throat. But it's not about fighting, June. It's about knowing when to walk away. Her voice was strong, but it wavered at the end, the weight of her own uncertainty breaking through. Could she really walk away from him? From the way he made her feel? He stopped right in front of her, and for a moment, it felt like everything else in the room faded away. All the noise, all the chaos, was gone. There was only June and the storm swirling between them. You think you're the one in control here? June's words were low, barely above a whisper, but they hit her like a punch to the gut. You've been trying to control everything, your life, your feelings, this distance between us. But you don't get to decide that anymore. Kayla shook her head, a small laugh escaping her lips, bitter and sharp. I don't have a choice, June. You're not the only one who can't control everything. His eyes darkened, the slightest flash of something dangerous flickering in his expression. You're wrong. He stepped closer, his breath warm against her skin. You've been fighting me, trying to keep me out. But the more you push, the more I'm going to pull. And I'm not letting you go. Her pulse quickened at the intensity in his words. She wanted to pull away, to keep her guard up, but every inch closer he came, the harder it was to resist. I'm not like you, she whispered, more to herself than to him. But June heard it, and his hand gently cupped her face, lifting her chin so their eyes met. No, you're not. And that's exactly why I want you. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy, and Kayla could feel them sinking into her, slipping past the walls she'd so carefully constructed. For the first time, she wasn't sure if she could walk away. The truth was, she didn't know how to stop wanting him. Kayla couldn't stop the tremor that ran through her as June's hand lingered on her cheek. She stood frozen, caught in a moment she had told herself would never happen. She had spent so long trying to keep control of her life, her heart, her space, but now, standing so close to him, she was unraveling. You don't get it, do you? She whispered, her voice shaking despite her efforts to stay strong. This isn't just about you and me. I have a life, a future that doesn't fit into your world. June's gaze never wavered. He didn't flinch, didn't move back. He just stood there, close enough for her to feel his heartbeat against her own. You think you're the only one with something to lose? His voice was quiet, but the weight of his words hit her like a sledgehammer. His eyes burned with an intensity that made it impossible for her to look away. I'm not the only one who has something to fight for, Kayla. Her chest tightened, and she had to fight the urge to take a step back. But she couldn't. She wasn't sure she wanted to anymore. There was something about him, something raw and unrelenting, that kept pulling her in. June. Her voice cracked. You're not what I need. You're the chaos I don't have the strength to handle. His jaw clenched, a muscle ticking beneath his skin. He didn't speak for a long moment, just stood there, his presence swallowing up the space between them. You think you can control the chaos? June finally asked, his tone dark and dangerous. You've been trying to for so long, but you're not meant to handle it on your own. You're not meant to fight it alone, Kayla. Her heart stuttered in her chest. Was he right? Did she need him? The truth twisted in her gut, sharp and painful. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, to keep her distance, to protect herself. But the pull between them was magnetic, undeniable. I don't know what to do with you, she whispered, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. I don't know how to walk away anymore. June's fingers traced her jaw, tender but firm, as though he was trying to make her understand. You don't have to walk away, he said, his voice low and sure. You're not alone, Kayla. Not anymore. But that was the problem. She didn't want to need him. She had never needed anyone before. And yet, here she was, fighting the urge to fall into the one person who seemed to see all of her, the good and the broken, and still wanted more. The air between Kayla and June had shifted. There was no denying it now. The tension, the pull, they were both caught in a storm they couldn't escape. Kayla stood in the middle of it, her heart torn in two, her mind racing. June's presence felt like a weight, but also a comfort. A dangerous comfort. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, barely able to get the words out. It wasn't the first time she'd said it, but this time, it felt different. Her chest tightened with something that resembled both fear and longing. June didn't step back. He never did. His gaze was intense, unwavering, like he had already made up his mind. Like he wasn't letting her go, no matter what she said. "You're not the one who decides that, Kayla," he said, his voice low, but full of that undeniable certainty. "I've told you before, you're mine. And I don't give up on what's mine." Her breath caught in her throat. She could feel the weight of his words, feel the control that he had over her, over everything she thought she knew. She had always thought she could handle everything, that she didn't need anyone. But here, in this moment, standing so close to him, she realized how wrong she had been. "June." Her voice cracked, and she hated herself for it. "What if I don't want to be yours?" He reached for her, his hand gentle on her cheek, his touch sending a jolt through her. "You do," he murmured, his thumb brushing away the tear that had escaped her eye. "You just don't know it yet. You've been fighting it. But deep down, you want this. You want me." She wanted to argue, to push him away. But how could she? How could she deny everything her body was telling her, everything her heart had already started to feel? "Why are you so sure?" she whispered, a part of her terrified of what it all meant. "Why me, June?" His eyes softened for a moment, the steel in them melting into something more vulnerable. "Because I've never been able to walk away from you, Kayla. And I'm not going to start now." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Kayla felt the walls she had spent her whole life building come crumbling down around her. But this time, it wasn't the fear of losing control that made her heart race. It was the quiet realization that maybe, just maybe, she was ready to stop fighting. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," she said softly, almost to herself. June smiled, a slow, dangerous grin that made her heart skip. "You don't need to be strong enough. You just need to trust me. Let go, Kayla. Let me take care of the rest." For the first time in her life, Kayla made a choice that wasn't about survival, that wasn't about fear. She reached out, her hands trembling, but steady, as she touched his face. "I'm not running anymore," she said, her voice stronger than she ever thought it could be. "So, what do you think? Was Kayla right to let go of the fight and embrace what June offered, or did she make a mistake she'll regret forever?" Drop a comment below and let me know where you stand. If you're ready for more of these explosive stories where love isn't always easy, subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Thank you for sticking with Kayla and June's journey, and trust me, this is just the beginning.